Hi, my name is Annie. Welcome to my channel. Today I will be showing you how to make this very cute Mayflower granny square. Mayflower is the state flower of Massachusetts, and this square is part of my state flower granny square project. Two things before we get started with the tutorial. First of all, this is an easy intermediate tutorial. I will show you exactly step by step how to make the granny square. However, I will not go into a lot of detail for very basic crochet techniques and stitches. So if you have previous experience, perhaps making granny squares, you know the basic stitches, techniques, I'm sure you can follow along with this tutorial. However, if you're very new to crochet, I would recommend you start with one of my beginner-friendly tutorials to master those basics first. A second thing to mention is that this is my original design. You are more than welcome to use the squares that you make with this tutorial in any of your crochet projects. However, I do ask that you give me credit for the design. I will include very simple guidelines in the description of this video on how to do that. To make this granny square, you are going to need yarn. I'm using this Hobby Rainbow 88 100% cotton yarn. This is a number 3 lightweight yarn. I really like this for granny squares. Then you will also need a crochet hook that matches the yarn weight that you picked, a yarn needle for weaving in your ends, and a pair of scissors. We are going to start the granny square from the middle. So we're going to make the center of the flower first, and then we'll work these 3D petals around it. So go ahead and grab whatever yarn you want to use for the center. I'm going to start my square with the slip knot. So I make a slip knot and I put it on my hook and pull it tight. And then I'll chain 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I join this into a ring by slip stitching here into this first stitch. Here we go. And I chain 1 stitch. And now for the center part, I am going to need 10 single crochet stitches around this ring that I just created. And I'm gonna start making my single crochets right from here. I chained 1. And then I work the single crochets in the very middle of this circle, which is a little hard to see for the first couple of stitches, but it's this opening right here. So I insert my hook, I bring the yarn through, I have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through 2. Single crochet. So I said I need 10 single crochets. For me, that initial chain 1 that I chained there, after I joined this into a ring, that is actually going to count as one of those 10 stitches, 10 single crochets. Now, I know there are people who don't count that single crochet, that chain 1 there as anything. They just use it to get to the right heights. If that's what you do, that's totally fine. The only thing we need to make sure is that we have 10 stitches here on the outside that we're going to be working our next round into. I'm going to show you shortly how I close my round and I count my stitches. So you can also make sure that you have your 10 stitches there on the outside. All right, let's see how many I got so far. gonna count them here on the outside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I do count this stitch on my, or this loop on my hook as one of those stitches too. So I have 8 right now, and I need 2 more single crochets. All right, so I got my 10 single crochets, and now I'm gonna close this round. I like to close my round here by slip stitching here into this very first stitch there, kind of on the outside where I just counted the stitches. This is the first stitch there on the outside. I slip stitch there to close my round. Like so. Then I chain 1, can break my yarn, and fast enough. And now I'm going to show you again how I count my stitches. So this is the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So for me, I count the stitch that I just slip stitched into to close this round. That's going to count as one of my 10 stitches on the outside. Now you might close your round differently. You might not count that initial chain 1 as anything. Whatever you do make sure at this point that you have your 10 stitches on the outside that you're going to be using for our next round. All right, we're ready to start working on our petals, and we are going to work 5 3D petals for this Mayflower. So go ahead and grab whatever yarn you want to use for the petals. I am going to attach my yarn with the slip knot. I put it on my hook. And now I'm going to attach this yarn into one of these 10 stitches here on the outside. You can of course use whichever method you prefer for attaching your yarn. This is how I like to do it. So pull the yarn through and pull it through that loop on my hook. And I like to make sure here that this is tight. So I pull that yarn end. There we go. It doesn't escape anywhere. And I'm going to start my first petal. And now all 5 of these petals are worked exactly the same way. So I'm going to show you one here. And then you can rewind and watch this part as many times as you need to make a total of 5 petals. But they are all exactly the same. So we're going to start the petal by chaining 2. 1 and 2. Then we are going to move on to the next stitch here on the outside. So this is where we attach the yarn. We chain 2 stitches, and we're going to move on to the next stitch here on the outside. And we're going to work a treble crochet there. So yarn over twice, insert in that next stitch, pull the yarn through. I have 4 loops on my hook. I go yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. I have 1 treble crochet in that stitch. Next, I am going to work a double treble crochet in that same stitch. So for double treble crochet, I go yarn over 3 times. I insert in the same stitch, pull that yarn through. Now I have 5 loops on my hook, and I go yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. That's a double treble crochet. It's just kind of like one size up from a treble crochet. And I'm going to work one more stitch into the same stitch here, and it's going to be another treble crochet. So yarn over twice. I insert in the same stitch where I have these 2 previous ones. Pull the yarn through, and I go yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. The petal looks a little funny at this point, but it's going to straighten out once we've finished this. So far, let's see what I have. I attach my yarn here, I chain 2 stitches, then in the next stitch here on the outside, I worked a treble crochet, a double treble crochet, and another treble crochet. And at this point, I'm going to chain 2 again. 1 and 2. And then I am going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So not in the same stitch where I have these 3 stitches, but into the next one here on the outside. Just a slip stitch there. Pull that yarn tight, and then I chain 2, which is going to start my second petal. So this is our first petal. We pull it a little bit, it gets to the right form. So with that double treble crochet there in the middle, we get this like slightly pointed petal for the Mayflower. And that's exactly how I work all the rest of the petals. So chain 2 in the next stitch, a treble crochet, double treble crochet, and a treble crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch into the next one. So go ahead, rewind if you need to see how we made this one, and make 4 petals exactly the same way. And then once you're done, meet me back here. All right, I have finished my 5 petals. The last thing I've done here is to chain those last 2 stitches for this last petal. And now I just want to show you here where I slip stitch this last 2 stitches. So I go into the same stitch where we first started this round. So where I attach my yarn, I chain those first 2 stitches for the first petal. I go into that very same stitch and I slip stitch there. And pull it tight. All right, there's my Mayflower. And next I'm gonna start working on the background. And before I can start creating the square around the flower, I'm gonna need something behind these petals to work my next round into. And for that purpose, I'm gonna be creating loops of chain stitches behind each petal. Now in this final one, we don't see the loops because they get covered up with the next round. But we are going to need them to be able to work the rest of the rounds. So I'm going to use the same color I used for the petals. And I'm right here where I slip stitched around to close the round in that first stitch there. And I'm going to start right from here. I'm going to chain 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And now I need to pull these petals back a little bit because I'm going to be working behind my work. I'm going to slip stitch these 3 chain of 3 here. It's kind of going to go over that petal on the back side, and I slip stitch here between these 2 petals. So the chain starts here, it goes over this petal, and I slip stitch here. Now I like to pick up 1 stitch from each petal here to make it sturdy and make sure it doesn't pull one side more than the other. And I just slip stitch there. And I start the next one right from this spot. 1, 2, 3, and again a slip stitch between these 2 petals. Pick up 2 loops, pull the yarn through, and pull it through the loop on my hook. So I have 2, let's see, get that out of the way. I have 2 loops here so far between these 2 petals. So I need 5 more. So chain 3 and slip stitch between these 2 petals. If you're wondering where the rest of my yarn ends went, because I currently only have this initial yarn end, I've been taking care of them as I go. I have a separate tutorial for that technique for weaving in your ends as you go. I'm not going to go into detail here, but I'll link to the tutorial in the description of this video in case you want to take a look. Okay, and the last loop. Now for this last one, it can be a little bit harder to see where those 2 loops are, but I basically do the same thing. I pick up one here and then another one on the other side, and it's kind of here on top where this first loop starts. Let's just pick up those 2 and I pull the yarn through. And now I also like to go here to the start of that first loop, slip stitch there to make it extra secure, and then I chain 1, and then I can fasten off. Oops. Here we go. So this is the front side, the Mayflower, and then in the back I have these 5 loops here that I'm gonna need for my next round. Next, I'm going to bring in my background color. I'm going to be using this brown color. You can of course pick whatever background color you like, but I really love this brown with the yellow and pink flower. And I'm going to attach my yarn again with a slip knot. And I put it on my hook, pull it tight, and now I'll attach my yarn to the start of one of these loops we created in the previous round. So right here at the start. Make sure it's in the very beginning of that loop. I like to pull this tight. All right, and I'm going to chain 2 right here where I attach this yarn. And now for each one of these loops, I'm going to be creating 4 half double crochet stitches. So that's what you see here, these 4 stitches. That's all we're going to be creating in this round. 4 half double crochet stitches into each one of these loops. So I chain 2 here. That's going to count as my first half double crochet. Then I go yarn over, insert in this space, bring the yarn through. I have 3 loops on my hook. I go yarn over and pull through 3. Half double crochet. Yarn over, insert in the space, bring the yarn through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through 3, and one more half double crochet for this loop. Oops, let's do that again. My yarn split there. Here we go. I have 4 half double crochets here, including that initial chain 2. And I'm going to pull these stitches a little bit to make sure that they are evenly spaced out in that loop. Okay, looks good. And then I'm going to move on to the next loop here. So 4 half double crochets in that, and I go yarn over, so straight into this next space. Insert the hook. I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through 3. So after we're done with 4 half double crochets in one loop, we just move straight into the next one. And we create 4 stitches into the next loop as well. Here we go. I have 4 in that one. And then I will do the exact same thing with the 3 remaining loops. So 4 half double crochets into each one of them. Once you finished with one here, just move straight into the next one and crochet your 4 half double crochets. So work all around your granny square. Well, it's not a square yet, but all around those loops, and then meet me back here. All right, I have worked all around and created 4 half double crochets into each one of those loops. And now I'm ready to join this round. And here I like to go into the second stitch here, counting from here. So remember how we chained 2 for a half double crochet here to start the round. So I go 1, 2 into the second stitch here to close my round. And slip stitch. All right, next we're going to start creating the square around the Mayflower. And now, as you have noticed, we have a 5-petal flower here on a square that has 4 sides. So it's going to take a little bit of counting for this next round to make sure that we can position the flower kind of straight in the middle of the square. So as you can see, we have here 1 petal pointing toward this side, and then these 2 petals are here on the opposite side of the square. And that's what we're going to be doing with this next round. Create the square so that the flower sits very nicely in the middle, straight in the middle. So I'm here, I have just slip stitched here to close that round. And now I'm going to start this next round in the stitch number 2, counting from this point where these 2 petals come together. So this is where I slip stitch to join the round, and these 2 petals are the ones I'm talking about. And I'm going to show you here how I counted the second stitch. So this here is the first stitch on that round, on this loop, and I'm going to count the stitch that kind of sitting on top of this stitch as my first stitch. So this one. If I move on to this next stitch here, this one's sitting on top of the stitch that's on the next loop. So this one here on top of this stitch is the one that I'm going to count as my first stitch for this loop. So 1 and 2. Second stitch. This is where I want to start my round. And now, since I'm currently still here, I need a couple of slip stitches here to get to the right point to start my next round. So I'll just slip stitch into the next stitch here. And I slip stitch into the next one. Okay, let's make sure I'm in the right stitch and I have the right amount of stitches here. So again, first stitch is this one. So 1, 2. I'm currently in the stitch number 2. And after this one, I still have 1 and 2 stitches on this side, on this loop. And this one here counts as the first stitch for this next loop here. Do make sure that you still have your 4 stitches. Sometimes we might accidentally get rid of a stitch by slip stitching there too far, or anything like that can happen. So do make sure that you still have your 4 stitches here, because we do need our 20 stitches all around for this next round to work. Okay, so I'm here and I'm going to start the next round right from this spot. And I chain 2. And then I'm going to create 2 more half double crochets into the same stitch. So this chain 2 is going to count as a half double crochet, and I create 2 actual half double crochets into this very same stitch. Oops, almost made a double crochet there, but half double crochet, we just pull through all those 3 loops. So yarn over, insert in the same stitch, pull the yarn through, 3 loops on my hook, and I pull through all 3. All right. Next, I'm going to chain 2 stitches for the corner, 1 and 2. I'm going to skip the next stitch here on the outside, and in the second stitch, I'm going to work another cluster of 3 half double crochets. So 3 half double crochets into this stitch. There we go. And this is actually my first corner. So 2 clusters of half double crochet separated by the chain 2. And in the middle of the corner, we have skipped 1 stitch. And now this is going to be my first side, and I'm going to skip 2 stitches here. And then I'll start my next corner from the 3rd stitch. So skip, skip into the 3rd one, 3 half double crochets. Since our square is still so little, we're not creating any clusters of stitches on the sides. So we're basically just making the corners of the square. Here we go. 3 half double crochets, I chain 2. I skip 1 stitch and 3 half double crochets into the next one. I get to my side, I skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2, and into the 3rd one, I create a cluster of half double crochets, 3 half double crochets. And this is how I work all around my square. There's my first cluster for this corner. I chain 2. I skip 1 stitch in the middle of the corner and 3 half double crochets into the next stitch. So in the middle of the corner, we skip 1 stitch, and then for the side, we always skip 2 stitches. There we go. So that's my corner there. And I skip 2, 1 and 2, and into the 3rd one, I create 3 half double crochets. I chain 2 for the corner. I skip 1 stitch in the middle of the corner, and then in the next one I'll create 3 half double crochets to complete this corner. And now I have created 4 corners for this round, and if I've counted my stitches correctly, I should have 1 and 2 stitches here. And then I can go ahead and close this round. So here I like to go kind of to that first stitch there on the outside and slip stitch there. And I make a couple of more slip stitches here to get to the next corner, because I like to start my granny square rounds in the corner whenever possible. And I chain 2. All right, let's see what we have so far. I'm gonna pull this a little bit. Pull this petals. All right. So now if we look at the square, we can see that we have 1 petal here on that side. That's gonna be the one that's sitting right there, the top petal, and then these other 2 petals here on the other side of the square. All right, and now we already have this square shape. It might look a little wonky at this point, but this next round is going to help even it out. So if we see here what we've done, we've created this round with the corners to get to the square shape. And now for the 3 remaining rounds of the square, we are just creating granny stitches all around the square. So 3 clusters of 3 double crochet stitches in these spaces, in the sides and in the corners. We do 2 clusters in the corner space, separated by a chain 2 for the corner. So if you've made granny squares in the past, this is going to feel very, very familiar to you. So I'm here, I closed the round, I slip stitch my way to the next corner, and I chain 2. And this chain 2 is going to count as my first double crochet. And then I work 2 more double crochets for this cluster. By the way, I am aware that some people chain 3 stitches there for a double crochet. So if that's what you like to do, you do you, of course. There's my first corner cluster. I chain 2 for the corner, and I work another cluster of 3 double crochets for this corner. Here it is, my first corner for this round. Next, I will move on to the side. And in the previous round, we did not do any clusters on the sides, which has created these corners. And now I will go ahead and make a cluster of 3 double crochets into that space between these 2 clusters of the previous round. So I just go straight into that space, and I make 3 double crochets there for my side. All right, and then my next corner, I'm in the previous round corner space here, so let's just go straight into that corner space, 3 double crochet stitches. Now this is going to feel super easy because we don't need to count those individual stitches like we did in the previous round. Just work the clusters in those spaces. Okay, first corner cluster, chain 2 for the corner, and then another corner cluster in that same corner space. Here we go. So far I have 2 corners here and 1 side, and this is how I'm going to work all around the square. So in the corners, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and in the side, just 3 double crochets into that space in the side. So go ahead, work all around, and meet me back here. All right, I have worked all around, and I'm ready to join this round. So those last double crochets are there for the side, and then I go here into that first stitch kind of on the outside. That's where I like to close my rounds here. These are all, of course, personal preferences, so whichever way you want to close your round, feel free to do it your way. And I just slip stitch my way to this next corner. And now the next round is going to be exactly the same as the previous one, with the only difference that now for the side we have 2 clusters here of double crochets since our square keeps growing. So I'm gonna start my next round right from this corner. Chain 2 counts as a double crochet for me. 2 double crochets for this cluster. So I have 3 total, including that chain 2. Then I chain 2 for the corner and 3 double crochets into the same corner space. And there's my first corner. And then I'll just move straight into this first space here between the previous round's clusters and 3 double crochets into this space. Oops, I have a little knot here. All right, I have 2, so 1 more into this space. And that's how I work all around. So again, feel free to go ahead, work around yours. In the corners, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and in the sides we do 3 double crochets into these spaces between the previous round's clusters. So work all around and meet me back here. All right, I have finished this round as well, and I'm gonna join it exactly the same way I joined the previous one. So I slip stitch here into that first stitch there, kind of on the outside, slip stitch, and then I slip stitch my way to the next corner to start my final round. Of course, this could already be done like this, but I'm going to add 1 more round. So I'm here at the start of this corner, and I do the exact same thing I did the 2 previous rounds. So chain 2 and 2 double crochets for the first cluster. I chain 2 for the corner and 3 double crochets into the same corner space. All right, there's my first corner. And now for the side, I create 3 clusters of double crochets, and then I go into the next corner, 3 double crochets, chain 2 and 3 double crochets. So exactly the same way as the 2 previous rounds, I'm going to work all around the square. So go ahead, work all around your square, and then meet me back here. All right, I have finished my final round, and now I will just join this exactly the same way I joined the previous one. So slip stitch there, and then I chain 1, break my yarn, and then I can fasten off. And here is my Mayflower. Let's see, that is the petal that's in the middle of that side. Let's pull those petals open a little bit. And there it is. So the only things that I have left here is weaving in those ends. I don't have that many since I took care of most of them as I went, but weaving the ends and then blocking the square, of course. But otherwise, I'm all done. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I would love to see your Mayflower granny square. So if you're posting pictures on Instagram, please tag my account. It's Wildflower and Stitch. Thank you again so much for watching. If you like this tutorial, please like the video, leave me a comment in the comment section, and subscribe to my channel. It does help me a lot. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Take care, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.